Hi, everybody. Welcome to my Mediation and Beyond YouTube channel. Today, I am super excited. I've been trying to coordinate this for a while to have Galit Romanelli from Jerusalem. Is that correct, Galit?
Well, actually, we're recently moved. We moved to Kfar Saba. But
okay,
yeah, Kfar Saba, Israel.
Okay, you're in Israel. I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I'll ruin it. So Galit is a coach. She's a mother. She's a wife. She's founder of Other Milk, whose passion for gender and female empowerment drives her to bring women together to openly share and care for each other in really a lot of aspects of her life, but in that area around breastfeeding, lactation, pregnancy, all of what that brings to a woman's life. She's a coach with her husband. He is the founder and they are the owners of Potential State. Please look that up. They have a podcast. They have a lot going on with that. Again, it's called Potential State, where she and her husband are deeply believe in the importance of owning one's narrative combined with the gentle advocacy to create positive change in your life. And she strives to create authentic spaces where everyone feels welcomed and empowered to share their life story. She uses her professional skills and personal experiences to help people feel seen and heard. So Galit, thank you so much for coming on today. I really
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, the reason I wanted to have you on was because, well, one, you have a lot of life experience that I'm going to pull from, but one of the topics I wanted to talk about for today was you're a child of divorce. I am not. And so I wanted to get a perspective through kind of the eyes of the child. And you're the adult child. I mean, we're always all children. So I wanted you, would you be able to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually a two-time divorced child of divorce. So my parents divorced when I was very young. I must have been about 3. I have no memories of them together. I remember my mom as a single mom, having a lot of support from her parents. And my dad, was in the picture with, I think like the routine custody in terms of like Monday dinners we had with him, and Thursday was kind of sleepover, and every other weekend. And my dad actually remarried pretty quickly. I would say I was about 5. And he remarried to my stepmom, who's still very, we're close. We have a great relationship. So she's really been a big part of my life from very early on. And my mom remarried when I was 7. And then my mom and my stepdad recently divorced about 6 years ago. And I think that what was really interesting for me was, as my mom's second divorce unfolded, it shed a lot of light on, I think, the first divorce. Because I had been so young, kind of watching my mom go through the second divorce, it really illuminated things in her narrative that then I was able to see as an adult and just see very differently, especially kind of as that.
What that was that you saw differently? And you were married at the time she got divorced, the second time?
Yeah, okay. I was married at the time she got divorced. I think that, well, I would say overall, kind of being a child of divorce and having my parents divorce when I was so young, there was some drive, looking back in hindsight, it kind of surprises me, but it was very clear to me that I wanted to invest in my relationship. And it was very important for me to find partnership and what that looked like. And I think I spent a lot of time devoting energy and thought into what I wanted my marriage and my relationship to look like. I was like a serial monogamous from like the age of 16. I had like a few boyfriends, but for very long periods of time. And I remember really having like a list of what I was looking for in a partner, and kind of watching my mom and her relationship, and then I think that kind of watching her relationship deteriorate interestingly enough, after I'd already kind of been married for a few years already, I'd had my first, really kind of made me realize, I think kind of how it really does take two for both the success of a marriage, but also the demise of a marriage and kind of a deterioration of a relationship. And it's never just one person. We all bring our baggage, and we all have patterns, and we all contribute. And I think that actually that's something that Asael and I are very kind of clear on, in terms of, part of our like relationship model is owning your shit, right? And recognizing like, what is your contribution, not just to the success, but also to the hardships, and to just think that, one partner is absolved of any responsibility.
Right. Just, when you were growing up, though, through the eyes of, through the eyes of a kid, did you think it was more one parent's fault than the other? Because obviously your brain's not developed, and children tend to take ownership of things that they never should be taking ownership, and parents can overshare with adult issues that really were never meant for the ears of a child. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I definitely remember, I remember, growing up with my mom's narrative. In other words, it was my mom would share from her experience and her pain and her anger towards my dad. And my dad, actually, to his credit, would rarely say anything about my mom. He kind of really held back, I would say. And so I did kind of grow up with this narrative of I'd say that kind of, my mom was frustrated, or she didn't think my dad was good enough for her, all these kinds of, very kind of slight and sometimes even subtle comments that kind of made it clear, whose side, and I took sides. In other words, like I was very much, my mom's daughter on my mom's side. And when my mom remarried, we moved to the States. And so it was even easier for me to kind of put a distance and a wedge between me and my dad, because we didn't see each other as frequently, and we didn't speak as often. I grew up, I think, kind of feeling like fathers were overrated. That was kind of the narrative that I adopted.
Based on your mother's story and how she experienced her husband, which then sometimes the children end up experiencing the other parent through the eyes of the wife's or husband, if it's the other way around, experience, instead of letting the child have their own experience. Right.
Instead of kind of, either removing themselves and letting whatever relationship between my dad and myself unfold, rather than kind of giving us that space. I don't think she did it maliciously, but that's just kind of how it happened. There was no kind of shielding or sheltering me kind of from her pain or anger or whatever emotions were there. And so I, being a young, devoted, loving child, it was just very easy to kind of take mom's side.
And mom.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I never, and because my dad, also because of the distance, but also because that just wasn't his narrative. I didn't actually hear his side of the story. I never heard what his perspective was, or what his feelings were, or, did he want the divorce? Did he feel like, he also felt like the marriage was kind of failing. And it was actually only until a few months ago that I reached out to my dad, and I was like, I want to hear your narrative. I mean, I want to hear your side of things. I need to understand and have a broader picture. And he was he was forthcoming. He was a little bit apprehensive. He was a little bit kind of worried that maybe he would say things that would upset me, or that, you know, would influence me, or things like that. And I said, you know, now I'm able to, at this age, and seeing, kind of having the experience of their divorce and my mom's second divorce, and being a mom myself, and being in a relationship, you know, with my husband where we work really hard on our relationship. I know that whatever he gives me, you know, the narrative is not his or hers. It's somewhere kind of in the middle.
Absolutely.
But I have to hear both sides. Otherwise, it will.
There is no middle.
Exactly.
There's no middle if you only have one side. And
yeah.
so that it's so wonderful that you were able to get your dad to actually speak and to have that kind of conversation. What would you tell parents? So if a mom's watching this, or a dad's watching this, and they're divorced, or they're in the process of divorcing, or thinking about it, because the children are looking at that divorce too. It's not just the adults. There's no keeping kids from it. I mean,
100%.
It just isn't. If you're going to do that, kids have a lens, they're seeing this. So what are some tips, let's say, you could give a parent, or even a child, like both?
Right.
That would be helpful.
First, Colleen, I think the most important thing is exactly what you said, and that's that, you know, kids see, and kids are really clever, and they pick up on far more than we like to give them credit for. And I think this notion of like, oh, well, they don't really understand what's going on, and oh, they don't, you know, they haven't heard. They know, they hear, they can feel it all. And I think that the most important thing is, first of all, to try and be kind to each other, which I'm sure is really difficult, because if you know, more divorced people were able to be kind, then maybe, right? Maybe. But I think to really kind of realize that that your kids are aware of it all, and I think it's fine to have all the kind of nasty emotions, and it's fine to have all of that, but you have to find an outlet that is removed, and that kind of not to contaminate that space and that relationship. And I don't know how exactly you do that, other than by being aware of how much influence, you know, that can have on the relationship. And the biggest tip I would say is never use your kids as pawns, or as a means for punishment, or, you know, as a way to get back, because that leaves everybody, I think, with emotional scars.
That you can't fix.
Yeah. And
I think that one of the things that parents can control, and that goes along with what you're talking about, awareness, is the energy. So you like have pick up and drop off, let's say, and then you drop your kids, and then they feel your energy is anxious or sad, and then the kid packs that up and puts it in their suitcase and takes it with them. Or then you pick them up and you're talking with the father outside, and you get in the car and you have this negative energy because you're angry or hurt or something that someone said. And like, kids pick up on all that. You don't even have to say anything.
Absolutely. Yeah. You really don't. You don't have to say anything. And it's so true that, you know, you say pick up and drop off. And I remember kind of I must have been really young. I must have been, you know, no more than 5 or 6. And I remember those really tense moments of pick up and drop off, and misunderstandings, or anger, or, you know,
silent treatment that carries that heavy energy, where no one says anything, which is equally as abnormal, because
right
for your in someone's presence, you say something.
Right. Yeah.
Normal. What would you say to a child? What would you say to like if a mother's watching or a dad's watching, and they're like, you know, I'm not sure maybe I could give a piece of information for my kid. Like, did you think when you were growing up it was your fault? Did you think you had to be a certain way so that
Well, so I think I was really fortunate because I had an older sister, and I feel like she shielded me from a lot. Um, and you know, she was 3 years older, and I'm sure that there was a lot more that she did understand and was able to piece together, and that she really, really worked hard at kind of protecting me and taking care of me. Um, but I would say, you know, again, to the point of the fact that, you know, your kids understand and know. So to try and be as kind of honest with them, but in a very respectful way
Mm-hmm.
as to what's going on. You know, and if you need to get help in order to do that, in order to kind of how to frame such a conversation, or maybe you even need to have such a conversation with a coach or a mediator or a therapist in the room, then to opt for doing that, just so that it's kind of contained. And so if things do come up, you know, or are able to navigate it without it kind of getting, without you kind of getting too flooded. Because I think that really the most important thing is that you find a way to express and be honest about what's happening, but in a way that your kids don't take it upon themselves. I never felt like it was my fault.
Good.
Because I think I was too young to even think that way.
Right.
And I don't know, it's really interesting because the truth is I've spoken about it a little bit with my sister, but not very much. I've actually spoken more about my parents' divorce with them than with my sister. And I don't know if that's because she doesn't want to talk about it as much. She's kind of much more closed off about it, or whether it's because, you know, it's so clear to me that we were in kind of like the trenches together, and we were, you know, she was shielding me. She was so in the thick of it that I just feel like I don't know if
He probably doesn't want to go back to the muck.
Yeah.
Right. The yucky part of it, and
Yeah.
keep moving on. When in reality, it's always there.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah. I think that's part of why it was so important for me to kind of like go digging, especially kind of in the work with Asael, and the work that we do, you know, it's there. So you might as well face it, turn around, kind of look at it, unpack it, and see, okay, what can I learn from this? What do I want to take? Because there are certain gains, there are certain things that, you know, you've learned from an experience that you do want to take with you, and what can I discard, and what will no longer serve me, and it's time to let go and you know, move on.
And I think that the best thing, what we're doing here today is really that it does impact you, whether you're 3, 4, 5, or 25, or 35, or whatever it is. It is part of your story. It's how you, and then asking your dad really helps you unpack more of the story, because you only got so much of the story.
Right. And right. Absolutely.
That's a really good message to especially for kids or young adults, to let them know, like, ask the questions.
Yeah.
It's okay to get more of the story, and you decide for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the story we tell and how we tell it, and if we kind of own our story and are an active narrator in our story, makes a huge difference in how we just manage ourselves in the world. And so, yeah, for me, it was really important, and it is still really important, you know, that I kind of own my story and have a better understanding of my parents and their narrative, and how much you know, because I don't want their narrative to be my narrative. I want to create my own. So I need to, you know, get as much information kind of as I can.
And I think that's so important, to collect all the data you can on your life, right? And all the players and characters in our lives that are, you know, that important and profound and meaningful, and who've made significant contributions, and to gather that information and then figure out where that lands for yourself personally. So Thank you so much for sharing, like, through the eyes of a child, what divorce is like. And I know we're going to end here, and then we are going to, for people who want to continue to watch, you're going to see part 2 and part 3. And part 2 will be divorce through the eyes of a wife and then through the eyes of a mother. So I'm going to end us here, and then we'll pick up where we left off in a little bit.
Thank you so much, Colleen.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.